Yo, how is it going, Bears fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Bear Down Podcast, where we talk everything Bears every week. I would like to start off this podcast by first off apologizing. I am a little bit stuffy. I've got a little bit of a cold, so I'm sorry if I sound congested. And I would also like to say, wherever you are watching or listening to the podcast right now, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, please do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast. We're trying to continually grow our fan page or our fan base and continue to post. So today I'm riding solo and I'm going to be talking about how the 2020 Bears can improve. A couple of nights ago, we all know what happened in Los Angeles. Mitchell Trubisky benched on national TV. Apparently was a hip injury, but I don't think anyone believes that. Anyways, the Bears went down 17-7. I don't think Trubisky played that bad, if I'm being completely honest. Just my quick thoughts on that game. I don't think Trubisky was horrible. But I think it was unjust to bench him. I think there were many opportunities earlier on in the season where you could have benched him. But I don't think he was that bad. There were a lot of drops. It was a pretty sloppy game. Drop pick 6 by Kyle Fuller. Just a lot of big drops throughout the game. And the Bears season will end there as we drop to 4-6. So I'm going to talk about 2020 and how I think the team can improve moving forward. So let's start right off with Nagy. First off, I think it was super petty that Nagy benched Trubisky. I said it earlier, but there were a ton of other opportunities for him to do that earlier in the season, and he didn't do that. He didn't handle it well. He hasn't been good with the media the entire year, and it's over his head at this point, I think. The first thing that needs to happen is I think Nagy has to hand over the play calling duties to Mark Helfrich. Now, this could get really, really interesting if the Bears do decide to target Marcus Mariota in the offseason, but whoever's the quarterback next year, I think Helfrich deserves a chance at the play calling duties. Now, it's currently Tuesday morning. Nagy said this morning that he's not going to hand them over, but I think that's something that definitely needs to be looked into. The play calling all year hasn't been great. On 3rd and short, I was getting really pissed off a couple nights ago because Nagy wouldn't run I formation and just run it up the gut with Montgomery. He kept trying to do these weird stretch plays and ended up stabbing us in the back, and that's not something that obviously can happen. We got to convert on 3rd and short. Overall, I think the play calling this year has just been terrible. I think Trubisky threw it 43 times a couple nights ago. Obviously, we knew David Montgomery wasn't going to be too productive with a little bit of an ankle injury. I think he sprained his ankle during practice last week. Overall, I think one thing that needs to happen to improve the 2020 Bears is Nagy needs to at least look into handing over the play calling duties and seeing what Mark Helfrich can do. Next, moving on from Trubisky. Obviously, I talked about earlier how Trubisky was pretty fine a couple nights ago. He wasn't essentially impressive. There were some times when he missed throws. There was a touchdown to Anthony Miller that he underthrew, and it was absolutely going to be like a walk-in touchdown. That would have been like an 83-yard touchdown to Miller, and he underthrew Miller. He didn't get much help from his receivers. We have the most drops in the league. It was a pretty sloppy game. I still think we need to move on from Trubisky in general. And I think look to get someone in free agency or by trade. So whether that's Cam Newton, someone like Teddy Bridgewater, maybe Marcus Mariota if he pops up, I think you try and get someone through free agency or through a trade in March. Next, we're talking about the draft. We have 2 second-round picks. Also, we got a compensatory a 4th-round pick from cutting Mike Davis. I think we need to patch up the O-line in the draft 100,000%. We see the issues with the O-line right now. Kyle Long on IR. Rashad Coward is in. He was getting toasted all night by Aaron Donald, even though I know he's pretty inexperienced on the O-line. We do have some pieces that are pretty good and can be better. Cody Whitehair was a little bit better at center. James Daniels back at that position that he played in college. That looked a little bit better last week than it did against Detroit, so I was happy about that. But overall, we just have to patch up the O-line in general. If you want to give a quarterback time to throw, that 100,000% needs to get better. Next, let's talk about the tight end position. A situation that's been very murky the entire season with Adam Shaheen and Trey Burton. A lot of people starting to lose respect for Trey Burton. I think it's because he gets a little anxious. I mean, we know that he has gotten anxious before. He's admitted to getting anxious before. There's been reports about him getting anxious, and just overall him not playing throughout time. We all know how talented he can be if he is on the field. And it's tough to see him not play. And obviously Adam Shaheen, someone who we picked in the second round over guys like Alvin Kamara, Juju Smith-Schuster, George Kittle, it's tough to see him not pan out whatsoever. He's become a healthy scratch in some of these games. And that's been really, really tough to see. So I think we have to find a way to get a new tight end. I think Ben Broniker's fine, but obviously he can't do it as a starter. So finding a new tight end it is going to be really essential to help improving the 2020 Bears. And then my final point that I've written down in what's going to end up being a fairly short episode is I think you got to give Nagy and Pace one more year to work with a non-Trubisky quarterback. I think their jobs are definitely going to go on the line. They're going to be in the hot seat after this season. Obviously, this didn't pan out how any of us wanted to. And, that's not fun at all. But I think you give him one more year to work with a non-Trubisky quarterback. A lot of people calling Pace out. I still think he's one of the best GMs in the league. He had a massive dub with Trubisky. Don't get me wrong. That might be the worst player traded up for in NFL history. He got Khalil Mack here. We're in a decent money position where if we cut a couple players this offseason, we can probably afford to pay a big-name player, such as a new quarterback or something like that. But you got to give Nagy one more year. He was the coach of the year last year. I do agree everything's over his head this year, and it's not looking great for him. But I do think you got to give both of them one more year to see if they can turn this ship around with a non-Trubisky quarterback. Comment below your thoughts, if you are watching on YouTube, your thoughts on just how to improve this team in 2020. Obviously, a lot of us are looking forward to the NFL draft, the offseason, free agency, seeing what happens with Trubisky, seeing what happens with play calling duties. We all know there's a lot to get fixed, and we're excited to see those improvements be made in this upcoming offseason. Wherever you are listening, once again, if it is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, please be sure to subscribe or follow the podcast. You can follow my Bears fan page on Instagram at @DashaiBearsNews, pushing towards 5K. And you can also follow Jaylen at @ChicagoBears_only and Parth at Trubisky Nation. And that'll pretty much do it. You can also follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at BearDown. And man, I'm just trying to push through at this point, and I'm not sure what's going to happen if we lose to the Giants. I just know that I want to push through this offseason because I'm actually really excited to see how that unfolds. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to stay positive. I stated at the end of every episode. I know it's not real easy to be positive as a Chicago sports fan, but hey, the Chicago Blackhawks are doing pretty well right now, and Kobe White's playing pretty well for the Bulls. So there's little glimpses of stuff to be positive about, and I just want to get to this 2020 offseason with the Bears. Thank you guys for listening, and as always, bear down, Chicago. Peace.